Let's turn to crypto, and Coinbase is pitching a crypto blueprint to Congress with a proposal to establish a new regulator for digital assets. To take us through that blueprint, Ian Lowe joining us from Dacxi. Ian, great to talk to you again. So of course, Coinbase has been locked in, not knocking heads, of course, with the SEC in the States. So what are they proposing?
Yeah, good to talk to you, Andrew. So Coinbase have come out with a proposal that outlines what regulation for the crypto industry might look like. So just some background on this. Coinbase is one of the world's largest centralized exchanges. And this proposal that they've published is really specific to the US market. Now, they've outlined sort of 4 guiding principles, and then they go into a little bit of detail on each of these, but let me just quickly read these off to you. The first is define a separate regulatory framework for digital assets. So, really what they're saying is we don't want to take, the regulation in its current form as it exists for other financial instruments and just copy and paste it over to digital assets. And I think there'd be industry-wide furious agreement on that point. The second is appoint a single regulator to oversee digital asset markets. So that's a slightly more interesting proposal. Protect and empower holders is the third of their guiding principles, which is a bit of a motherhood statement, really. And then promote interoperability and fair competition is the fourth, which also falls into the motherhood statement category. But look, if we take a couple of steps back, there's actually some really interesting issues for regulators to contemplate, and these are universal. So these are issues for regulators in all markets to think about and to various degrees resolve. And some of them are the following. Today, a decentralized exchange means unregulated. Unambiguously, a decentralized exchange is unregulated. Today, a centralized exchange by and large means it's somewhat regulated. So centralized exchanges, for example, go through know your customer or ID verification processes when you sign up to use their platforms. And also in Australia, for example, anti-money laundering provisions that are overseen by the likes of AUSTRAC are imposed through centralized exchanges. So decentralized, unregulated, centralized, somewhat regulated, but centralized exchanges still today, almost universally, does not mean independent custody. So the idea of independent custody of customers' assets is a really important principle, we think, for the crypto industry. And consumer protection is obviously central to the objectives of regulators. So really what we're saying is the regulated finance industry today adopts independent custody of custody assets. It's very common. And that same principle needs to apply to the crypto industry. So whilst centralized exchanges are somewhat regulated, the independent custody of customer assets is one of the things that we think regulation should really consider. And at the same time, centralized exchanges are obviously much easier to regulate. So if we think about the Coinbase proposal, it represents the Coinbase perspective. There are competing interests all attempting to influence regulators in different markets. The full spectrum of those seeking to influence regulators is evident. So right through from don't regulate anything through to regulate absolutely everything within an inch of its life. But in the end, regulation is about consumer protection, and no one can successfully argue that crypto shouldn't provide consumer protection.
So Ian, what about what's going on in Australia at the moment? We still haven't seen any significant movement on this front, even though I guess we just had news in the last couple of days, of course, where some ETF providers are getting into this space. So clearly there are some products now hitting the market, although no direct exposure to the crypto coins. It's more the technology as such. What developments are you seeing on the regulation front in Australia?
Well, look, ASIC have been, increasingly active in their contemplation of regulation. Industry's put forward a framework through Blockchain Australia on the sorts of issues that the industry believes regulation needs to contemplate. And we know that ASIC are looking at this very, very closely, and there's increasing pressure on them to regulate. And one of the reasons for that is that more and more of the industries, and by the industry I mean crypto, more and more of the value that's being traded in the crypto industry is being traded through decentralized finance, or what we call DeFi. And these are non-centralized exchanges. So these are completely unregulated environments. And so if you've got a growing volume of total market value transacting through decentralized exchanges, increasing utility on blockchain directly for consumers where they don't need to be going through brokers or banks, then I think this is really crystallizing for regulators the need for them to act. So they're certainly motivated to start to come up with models that they can consult with industry to refine and start to bring those into practice.
Ian, thanks for joining us from Dacxi.
Good to talk to you.